Hi guys, and welcome to this breakdown of The Castle by Rob Sitch. I'll be looking at a question from Art of Smart. It's a really good site that I like to use. They seem to get the questions on point in terms of how close they reflect the current syllabus and ideas that are somewhat travelling around our industry in terms of education and the modules and the HSC and how it's delivered and taught. So I really like this site. They're doing a great job, and I reckon you should have a look at it at some point. I really like this question. I think that it offers so much, and it really gets both student and teacher to really think about this text in new and interesting ways. I know I sound like the syllabus there, but as you know, I do all my breakdowns, analysis, no editing, ad lib. Okay, don't take ad lib out of context. I do it because, number one, if you're thinking, well, Tim, maybe you should structure all your thoughts and ideas. But I did that at the start. And when I mean the start, I mean years ago when I first did this channel. And whilst it seemed nice and smooth and put together, when you heard it, phonically, it came across very pedestrian, boring and lame. But if I put myself under a bit of pressure and just try and do the analysis as I understand it, without any notes and anything like that, I deliver with a bit more intensity and just makes me deliver. And it seems like the kids can actually, I can engage a bit more. That's why. So I just throw myself under the bus a bit and just try and deliver something of quality without the notes in front of me and just use my sort of, problem-solving skills and things like that. Okay, so that's why I always say ad lib or done in one take, or I also say it because you'll actually know if you hear a few stumbles, well, basically because I'm just going, okay, without any notes. So, but that doesn't mean I haven't researched the stuff. I have written essays on this and worked with my classes on this stuff plenty of times. So, this question, right? Now this question, can actually divide many within the English faculty at my school, and it offers certainly fuel for debate. But this is how I see it, and you can, take what you need out of it. If that helps you, well, then great. So, cultural voice, okay? How is that portrayed, and what is the depth of that statement, and how do you understand that statement? And, the way I see it is how is culture and its representation procured, which is taken in and delivered, and what does it say? Okay, that is essentially what cultural voice is to me. Affirmed and refuted is, does the text break or reiterate common stereotypes? Now, I've seen lots of essays on this and lots on similar questions at least, and lots of students will go with, promoting the cultural stereotypes of these really big en vogue political movements, which are, wonderful in their own right. Racism, feminism, they're really, in the public eye at the moment, and they seem to be a connective point for teachers, and I'm sure it works very well. But, if you really want to test your depths in terms of ability, and again, this is all subjective, but think about it for a while maybe, I think the cultural voice and certainly the stereotypes are refuted with depth, okay? So I think that the big political ones are more surface level, and that has its own, positives and negatives. But I think still, in many ways, it's a constraint because there's only so far you can go in this text when you look at that. It's a big part, don't get me wrong. And, for example, Sal's role as, a very traditional mother, wife, plays with that stereotype, which many people, don't like or want to see changed, which is a fair point. No, don't get me wrong. But you have to think it from the director's standpoint, which, we are analysing his text. And first of all, it has to be plausible. He can't create a setting of a family in the mid-90s on the outskirts of Victoria and not represent it with some accuracy. There has to be some of that there. Okay, so you can't, have the most woke family that is overly progressive just living in, Coolaroo, which I don't think is a real suburb anyway. But you get the point. It has to be plausible. So that, these stereotypes must be promoted at some point and then hopefully broken. And I think there's a lot of that there. So the way I would look at this question is I would refute it, okay? I would say that the text refutes stereotypes, and I'll pick the ones that it refutes, and I think that'll offer you greater depth. So number one, let's look at some big stereotypes that are within Australia, and most notably those of a socioeconomic status, ones that are similar to the Kerrigans, ones that have these traits, and they are so clear. Okay, I start by just looking at our divorce rate in, forget Australia, the Western world. It's well over 50%. There is a real, unstable nature to this family unity and cohesiveness that is within our society that is also stereotyped, and the Kerrigans smashed that. They dismantled that stereotype. They're exceedingly cohesive, and their functionality as a family is, I'd say, very rare. Okay, and what makes it even worse and more of a, dismantling or a breaking of stereotypes is that if you go to those particular areas and the stereotype that he's promoting in terms of wealth and education and social class, it'll be a huge breakdown of that stereotype because those rates are even higher in those areas. That's the first thing I'd focus on, because you can see Sitch really, and this is how you get the concept of egalitarianism in there. Okay, this family really goes beyond material, possessions and education to look at the more fundamental elements of family bonds and togetherness, and that's egalitarianism. It goes beyond wealth, goes beyond education. It creates a sense of equality, and that is inherent in the way they behave. That is the deeper understanding. Okay, that's really important. So, those two elements there, which are fundamentals to I think, Sitch's narrative and social commentary, would easily refute and break down, stereotypes. And let's go to a big one that I don't know how this one gets left out. Like it almost amazes me, but the text initially was developed almost like, it is actually, an allegory for Mabo. It runs on those lines. Okay, there's not a single Indigenous character in the text, but yet it gets mentioned in flex throughout the piece. That is not a random act of just, let's try and integrate some Indigenous history. There, it is a ploy. You see it, and that is crucial. You got to explain that. Okay, Daryl Kerrigan, in many ways, has the experience, and Sitch does it very well. He doesn't. Say that we can live through such an experience, because we can't. We can't, as a person who's not Indigenous, we can understand the suffering, but we can't. We, in theory, don't know exactly what it feels like to have, your land taken away. And I think that the Mabo reference is a hit on, it just connects with that point, and that has to be mentioned because it has so much depth. Daryl Kerrigan essentially goes through this native title issue. He fights for his home, okay, over a larger, more powerful occupation. Okay, this is essentially, the lands of the Indigenous people were taken over; they were occupied, and thus Airlink, the consortium, as they say in the film, wants his land. Daryl Kerrigan and Eddie Mabo have a common thread, and what we take out of it, this is where we can take the depths of this text, is that essentially, and this is at the end, you sit back and think, maybe our struggles aren't that different after all. Maybe we can find an element, okay, within our culture that says we do have this battler, the Aussie battler ideology, where we come from hardship and we learn to come out the other end. Okay, Eddie Mabo fought for what he thought was right. He believed that his land was taken away from him, and he took the Queensland government to court and got part of his identity back. And in essence, that Kerrigan House is a superlative way of highlighting what Sitch crafts in his view of Australian culture and identity, because the walls have nothing to do with what goes on inside. And that is so fundamental to the Kerrigans, what they portray and who they are. So there is so much there. And if you don't see that Mabo sort of thread, think about the ending of the text. right? When do you see, a character arc that is actually so profound in this text? This character goes through a maturity and shows a clear shift in his perception of the world, the people around him, and it grows. That is character arc. He grows clearly. Okay, that's another smashing of common values, because if you were to go and find the stereotypical Kerrigans and see that within a lifetime they will go through difficulty and have greater awareness of racial tolerance, that is the ultimate goal, for people that want that kind of, it should be everyone in theory, but I'm being very open to everybody's ideas and views, but that is the ultimate goal for everyone, is to be more harmonious. And Daryl Kerrigan's character to sow such reform by the end of the text, and the quote was, "When will this country stop kicking its own in the guts?" Somewhat, and maybe I'm paraphrasing, but I said it's all ad lib. That is a real validation that he has actually learned through the suffering. Okay, he goes through a sense of discrimination. Okay, he starts to figure out that the people that don't have the money and don't have the power start to lose their voice. Okay, and then he sees the potential effects on the downtrodden. So there you go, guys. That is my breakdown. I think there is so much depth to that text that really never gets played with. I hope it was used to you. Sorry for being so late. Hopefully you get it by week 6, week 7. Oh, that's late. It should be week 5, but I've been doing other things and I apologize. Thank you, guys. Have a good day.